Welcome to the Movement Minutes with your host, Reed Nellis. Here, we pursue the human connection. We learn how to empower one another. We discuss clinical pearls. We discover our passions. We reflect on our capacity to achieve. We remain open to novel trends and concepts because regardless of our backgrounds or experiences, our successes or failures, we all speak the same language, human movement. All right, on today's episode on the podcast, we've got Harvey Martin. He's a mind coach, a breath coach, a human performance specialist, and the founder of a company called MindStrong Project. With all of this passion into building people to be their best possible self, Harvey describes himself as a human tinkerer. What this means is that he finds creative ways to make people better. One of his mantras and his idea or philosophy for building this company and pursuing this passion is to live his best life every single day and therefore allow others to do the exact same. With this idea, Harvey isn't just trying to get people to be healthier, he's teaching them to be better problem solvers, look into themselves a little bit deeper, and pursue their passions and ultimately be more human the best way possible. In today's episode, we go through Harvey's background as an MLB pitcher who got the yips and obviously not able to hit the strike zone, kind of ended his career short. But through these shortcomings and trials and tribulations of his career, it allowed him to pursue his passion of helping people achieve their best day possible every single day. And he pursued this passion so diligently that it even meant sleeping in somebody's closet, a friend's closet, for almost a year, really struggling to whatever degree necessary to make this potential outcome happen. And I love hearing these gritty stories from individuals like Harvey. Spoiler alert, he made it. He's pursuing his passion. He's kicking butt, taking names every single day. He's a major stud in this healthcare world, this human performance world, breath world, mental strength, MindStrong Project world, right? And he's a consultant for NHL players, NFL players, everyday common folk, CEOs of big companies, NCAA colleges, everything, right? And he is truly living his best life every single day. So join me in welcoming Harvey Martin. All right, you guys, today we've got Harvey Martin, founder of MindStrong. We just heard the big formal intro, but Harv, tell us a little bit more about yourself. What do we need to know? Who is Harvey Martin?
Who is Harvey Martin? What a daily question I ask myself.
There you go.
So there you go. I guess I'll start my daily question with it on this one for whoever listens to it. Yeah, man, I'm a guy who I just came out of a pretty cool conversation, so I can just funnel it into this. But I'm just a guy who tries to understand human health to a little bit deeper level. I prioritize that mostly on myself, try to figure out and tinker with things. Developed MindStrong for really just a medium to make what I just said comfortable enough for the rest of the world. So I figured if I had a company and I call it the MindStrong Project and then I title it under an LLC, I could get away with saying this is what I do for a living, and if you want to do it with me. But so yeah, I mean, I live a life of I try to live a life of trying to just understand myself, have a little bit better higher thinking, some of those things that make me curious about being a human. And then I tie that into trying to help other people with that. So I'm sure we'll talk about that and what that means to me and what that means to performance and what I do for a living. But yeah, what I do for a living is I run a company called the MindStrong Project, where basically I'm a consultant for primarily professional athletes. I work a little bit with business executives, organizations around the country, primarily NHL and a little bit in the Major League Baseball. And then, like I said, some organizations where I really just try to go in and teach people certain ways, unique ways, creative ways to be healthy and optimize the way in which they think. So everything that I'm really curious about in general is just how do we have a little bit more space in our consciousness to be better problem solvers. I really think that's sort of the separator of being a human, is our ability to solve problems. And that's what I'm really fun. I have a really fun time trying to figure that out. And so for a living, that's what I do. I consult with those types of individuals and I help them try to solve problems. And wherever we go from there, we go from there.
There you go. No, that's what a business model, eh? Like,
yeah.
Being a puzzle putter together. Like, I want to put that on my business card sometimes. Just like, I just put puzzles together. They're human puzzles, but we just try to figure things out one step at a time. And something that you said that I think is awesome and kind of missed upon a lot of times with any coach, therapist, provider, person like you, whatever, is you're a tinkerer on yourself first. So it's
Hmm.
not even like a practice what you preach kind of thing, but if you have an idea, you're going to run with it on yourself and experiment on yourself and be willing to throw yourself into these situations before you can ever recommend it to a clientele purpose, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, a lot of stuff that I do, I guess it comes from an esoteric type deal. I really do believe in intuition as the highest form of intelligence. I mean, all of us are intuitively our own genius. I really do believe that and I think that. So that's what incentivizes me personally. I just am interested in what I'm able of feeling and thinking. Now, what you have to do, and you know this, if you're looking at a professional organization or an individual, they're not necessarily interested in that right off the bat. They're not really interested in my own intuition. So how do you turn that into a package or a system? And that's where I think coaching comes into play. That's where it kind of becomes tangible, which is what I do. So for me personally, yeah, I have no idea what I'm capable of. And I don't know if anyone knows what they're capable of. So for me, I tinker everything on myself, whether that's cold, running distances, fasting, nutrition stuff, tinkering with hydration, sleep patterning, breath practices, heat exposure. I just came out of a sauna, so my face is super red, and we went really long today. So, but I'll still be all right. But my point is, that's all for me to understand me a little bit more. That's not as attractive when you're working with an organization. They don't necessarily want to have that mystical, esoteric way viewpoint. They do want it for themselves, but they don't want that out of a consultant. So, how do you take your learning experience, your own curiosity? That's where I think it becomes really fun because then you create like systems and that comes through like years of experience. I usually try to be about 6 months in advance of things that I've tried on myself at like a minimum. So what have I seen in the changes in myself, the way in which I breathe, how I sleep, how I feel, what's that movement like? I've had a really big kick on balance as of late, which a lot of people are seeing a lot from me recently. Balance and hanging, I actually was tinkering with about 2 years ago. I just wasn't there yet. I wasn't confident enough of how I could map it out, how I could program it, how it made the most sense. I didn't feel like I could articulate it well enough to like simplify it for somebody else and have them understand how to implement it into their lives. So usually like things that I'm working on in my own self, they don't come out for a while, or at least until I feel like I'm comfortable enough in my own language, a way in which I can teach that and actually like help somebody. Because I do, like I said, I started at intuition, esoteric. I do definitely believe that that's our own individual goal, our own individual intelligence. But at the same time, like if you're working with somebody and they're not getting better, you're just not helping them. So someone comes to you and you need to get a result. So I don't want to just fall in this world of process, man. It's great having a great process. Like, no, at the end of the day, like there you need to have an outcome that's
Progress,
progressive. Yeah.
progress
So
with the process, right?
yeah. So
Um,
those are, that's how it looks.
yeah, that's there's a lot there, right? I mean, I could go off on a billion different tangents just based off of that information alone, but I think something that you touched on is you don't know how smart you are. You don't know how good you can feel until you start toying with these things. Like, I think
Hmm.
you're a pretty smart individual, and you might think that of yourself too, right? And I think that of myself. I mean, I got to where I am today from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
unless you start trying different things, learning different things, exploring new opportunities, you don't know what you could potentially be missing out on. And from
Hmm.
somebody like yourself, trying it out on yourself first, it's so easy in today's age, the Instagram age, of becoming an immediate professional. And
Hmm.
you didn't do that. You
Yeah.
took not only the time 6 months ahead of time before incorporating these concepts and intervention strategies really with individuals, but how did you get to even becoming to that stage? Tell us a little bit more about your background and history.
Yeah. It's a really cool question. It'll be a fun one to answer.
I'm sure you've
So
never answered this question before, huh?
yeah. Well, the thing about what I do for a living, so when I speak or I give presentations or I map out the way in which I train, I don't even really know how to define it. So I don't try to. I've just believed in the purpose that I try to do, which is simply just be healthy. And then if I can help other people be healthy, whatever platform they choose to be on, it typically works out. So I don't really negotiate after that. If I can get this individual or this team, this organization to be healthy mentally, emotionally, physically, it's inevitably something's going to get better. So that's the same way I kind of look at the simplicity of how I operate. Now, from that aspect and how I've done these certain things, not many people know this, but I've been doing MindStrong, titling at MindStrong since 2013. So I've been working and operating. I did my first presentation to a university in 2013, and I talked over the Diamond series, which is a large subjective, psychological thing that I use to help people with their self-awareness. I started teaching that publicly, 8, 9 years, whatever long that was, years ago. And I didn't get any sort of, deep clientele, consistent clientele for 6 years after that. So we're going to come up on about the 4th year this year where I've been doing MindStrong pretty much full force, and doing some certain things. But it's fun to look back at like how long I've been studying just a certain piece of thinking. There you go. Yeah, that's it. That's the Diamond
For
series.
those listening, I have my MindStrong Project Diamond series on my desk. God, I downloaded that I think like a year and a half ago.
Oh,
It
it's
sits on
so
my desk
cool.
all day
That's
long,
so
and
cool.
I've printed out the sheets probably 6 different times because everything's changing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't want to interrupt. Continue. Sorry.
No, that's great. So I actually developed that in 2008 when I was playing baseball. I developed that for myself. I played baseball, so it's called the Diamond Series, a baseball diamond. And before every season, I would just write out my purpose, my standards, my systems, and my vision. And I didn't tell anyone that. I actually started writing and journaling when I was 15. I think that that's become way cooler now that I'm in my 30s, but I have like a list of journals that I've written down for over half my life. So I've really tracked things that I've thought over and things that I've questioned. It came into that Diamond series, and what happened was someone that I was working with at the time actually made me a really cool like major league packet, and they printed it out for me for my last year of baseball. And so when I would get asked to speak, I just spoke on what that was because I didn't really know. I didn't even plan on being a speaker or going and doing conversations. And when people would ask me to talk and they say, "What are you going to talk about?" I just defaulted to what I was doing. So it was that Diamond series. Obviously, it's been with me for a long time at this point, and I still use it. But that's kind of where I'm headed at with it, man. Is that it's been a really long journey. It's weird to know that what I do now for a full time job is something that I thought I would do years ago. And it's really weird because my job, my vision always was just how do I do my ideal day and do that and just do that over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And the cool thing was like years ago, I literally just did that. Another thing that not many people know about, but in my mid 20s, I was very financially not doing well. I was sleeping in my buddy's closet for a little over a year, not really, making any gains in my financial world. But a big part of it was I believed in what I teach now: breath, movement, sleep, nutrition, and social connection. And I just figured if I'm going to die someday, I should just do that. And then if something comes out of doing that and I get to do it for a living, then it'll be a pretty fun life. And that's what I hope to just keep getting better at. But more so, how do I help people establish their own ideal day? How do they establish their own vision, their own purpose? And you find like a very sustainable way of living when that happens. And I've never really negotiated with whether or not I should or shouldn't do that.
Yeah. I mean, what a life to like wake up, and not that it's the same day every day. It's not like you're living in
Mm-hmm.
a Groundhog's Day movie, right? But like you're trying to live your best day every single day and then
Yeah.
inspire and empower others to do their best day. And it might not be the exact same protocols and programming set up for each individual, but tailoring that to them the best
Mm-hmm.
way possible, based off of their goals, based off of their intents and maybe previous notions and things like that. That's awesome. Um, so I was hoping you'd get into like how good of a pitcher you were, but I'm not gonna pump your tires too much, Harv. Harvey can throw the ball pretty hard. I mean, can you still
I
fly it
still
into that
can actually. Yeah, I still
again?
can. I was up to 90. I was up to 94 last winter. I haven't tried since
Bring
then,
him
I
back.
suppose. But I was still throwing it pretty good, and I was 30 last year. So in my 30s, I could still get in the mid nines.
Yeah, but it doesn't count if you're being in heads left and right, Harvey.
Yeah, and that's what I did. So that's why I'm not playing.
I mean, control is just a little portion of it, right? That's
Hmm.
hilarious. You kind of mentioned this. You would write this Diamond series out for yourself before every season. And I'm guessing harken back to it throughout the season and kind of make addendums and things like that. Was there a pivotal point in your baseball career where you kind of had that aha moment? Like this was always, like you just mentioned, in the back of your head, getting into this livelihood, really, in this career, if you even want to call it. Like, I hate the word career for me
Sure.
personally.
Yeah.
So however you think of that term, but was there a pivotal moment in your career, in your baseball career, that led you into this?
Yeah, that's so in 2008 was when I really started diving into some things. So really, really quick, when I was 15, I wrote down my first goal, and it was just to play on the varsity baseball team my sophomore year, and I did. And I just was 15, and I was like, well, that worked. I'll just keep writing down the things that I want to do. So then I was 16, and I did the same thing, and I just kept doing that. And it was I kept all these papers. I still have all these goal sheets, and what was cool about it was typically what I wrote down and believed I would do, I would typically do it. And didn't really talk about it. I didn't even really know why. I just would be like, that's cool. It motivates me. It inspires me. It makes my life seem cooler. I'll just keep writing down things I want to do. Then, when I was 19 years old, I had a really good chance at being a really high round draft pick in Major League Baseball. And, but at the time, for a lack of a better term, let's say I wasn't the best lifestyle choice maker at 19. I kind of lived on my own for a bit there. At the end of in high school, it was a little bit tricky with the family. We moved a lot growing up, and so I just didn't have necessarily a bad. I had great parents, still super close to my parents. I've had great coaches. I wouldn't say I had great guidance in this 16 to 19 range, if you will. And so I just made bad choices. I had an elbow surgery the very last game of the season, which would have led into my draft year. And it ended up, long story short, turned out really bad. The tear was really bad, had some stuff in my armpit and my nerves, my bone, my wrist. And it was, I went and met with Team USA, and they very simply told me I would probably never pitch again. And this was when I was 19, and this was 2 weeks earlier. I thought I was going to make a lot of money as a 19-year-old in a draft. So you kind of relook at some things. I say this very concretely. Like, that was a transition in my life. I've actually really never been the same since that, because it was the first time in my life where I went, well, if I don't play baseball, I'm definitely not a good student. So I'm not going to last in college. And I wasn't going to last in college. So then it turned into, I remember the conversation my parents said I was going to have to work for my dad in the newspaper business, which, as everyone knows, hard copy newspaper business, not doing too hot with social media. So 10 years ago, if that's the career you're getting ready to go into, it's a little rattling. And so I changed my whole life, which is really wild. I don't know how it happened. I don't know. I have a faith, so this is kind of when faith got a little bit deeper with me. And really what took place was the way in which I hung out with people, how I studied, how I ate, how I trained. It literally just shifted. I didn't plan on it. I just got so scared of being what I was about to become that it shifted. And that kind of has stayed the same for the greater half since I was 19. So the last 12, whatever, 13 years that's been, it really has stayed the same, which has been, I'm very grateful for. Now, the aha moment with what I do for a living was, fast forward this about 7 years later. I was in minor league baseball with the Milwaukee Brewers, and I came down with some injuries. I was having a lot of injuries. I was a late round pick, I was a free agent. So you didn't tell your trainers you were hurt in my position, which I didn't, which obviously came back to bite me. But what was worse was I got what was called the yips in baseball, which is essentially an anxiety, and I couldn't throw strikes anymore. I literally couldn't pitch. It was a really weird feeling. I relate it to, if anyone's ever watched Space Jam, when they take the talent from the players and they put it in the ball.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. I just couldn't do what I was so good at my whole life out of nowhere. And I was 26 years old, so I got released. I moved to Minnesota, didn't know where to live. My family was down in Florida at the time. And I moved into my buddy's closet, and I had no money. I played minor league baseball. If anyone knows about minor league baseball, you make no money. I signed for $500, so I didn't make any of that.
Huge
I was in,
bonus.
yeah, exactly. And so life was a little bit different. And in that time, I was studying sports psychology. I had been studying a little bit of sports psychology and sport performance in my master's degree program. And I had to drop out until I was able to afford that again. But I was studying the psychology, self talk, thinking, cognition, and I was really fascinated by it. But what was the irony of it was that my psychology is what took me out of the game. So here's a guy
Yeah.
studied psychology and can't handle his psychology. And I'm actually at one of my buddy's houses right now. and James's house, and I actually swam in his lake in 2015, and we did breath work for the whole fall, and I would do cold exposure. And I went and did cold exposure that winter, and that was the first time that psychology and presence and breath work and awareness made sense to me. And so that was the aha moment. In 2015, I would have been 26, I think. I decided that I was going to dedicate my life to understanding psychology from a physiological, tangible skill set sort of way, and give myself power to take back what I was feeling. I was very anxious, very scared, very fearful. I was hurt a lot. I was injured. I was in a lot of pain emotionally. I had a lot of baggage, and the breathing and cold was what was saving me. So I just did that, and then, as I've already said to you, in the last 6 years, that just turned into something that now I teach people about their psychology through physiology. So the way in which you breathe, how you move, what your lifestyle habits are like, how you sleep. And I never knew that would necessarily happen, but that was actually the moment in which I just decided I needed to do that for myself. And it turned into something that now I do for a living.
Yeah, I mean, the way we feel isn't just biological, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the cognitive aspect of it, it's the social
Yeah.
aspect of it, it's the psychological aspect of it, and the personality with that person too. I mean, if we're thinking just the mental side of things, mind strong, um,
Hmm.
thinking is hard enough, much less
Hmm.
thinking about what you're thinking. Can we
Yeah.
truly have a purely mental problem, or I wouldn't even call it a symptom, an issue, an anxiety issue, or a depression issue, or a yips issue, or whatever you kind of struggled with, without a physiological issue, or vice versa?
Yeah, so metacognition is thinking about your thinking, right? So it is something that humans are able to have first and foremost. So we actually, we're the only species on the planet that have higher thinking, higher awareness, if you will. We can actually create a problem, solve a problem, create a problem, solve a problem. Like, we have the ability to communicate. So in the way in which we actually perceive the world is what separates us from any other species on the planet. I actually make this analogy very often. If apes and lions could communicate and form tribes and cultures and businesses and throw things, like, we wouldn't be here,
We'd
right?
be
So it does.
fucked.
Yeah, we'd be messed up. So now you look at that as, well, then what's the human separator? It is our mind. So it is our ability to have cognition. It's the fact that we can communicate with cultures around the world, with cultures internally, and we can decide what's the best decision to be the apex predator, right? That's how we develop technologies. And technology is not just a phone. A technology is a fire. It's a chair. Every advancement in humankind is a technological advancement. Now, the problem with a technological advancement, even though we psychologically solved something and got higher up on the food chain, which is every species demand on the planet is survival, reproduce, that ends the animal kingdom. We have generosity as our third pillar, right? Where you look at, okay, well, if we have these technological advancements, which is what we came up with through our mind to make life easier, which is great. I don't want to live in discomfort all the time, right? I want to
I don't want to be
know
in the
it, but I don't.
Renaissance era, like throwing my poop out a window anymore. I'm glad
Yes,
we're past
exactly.
that. So
Yeah, exactly. Now, the problem with that is that all these advancements come at a cost, and that cost is our physiology. Now we get into physiological demise. So, with all of the air conditioning that we are exposed to, 68 to 72-degree temperature throughout the entire year, wherever you live on the planet, is not actually adaptation to your cells. It does nothing for your cellular system. So you're going to have a physiological demise. There's going to be some sort of cost for that technological advancement. Now, there's ways to combat that through heat and ice and whatnot, and breath or pulse machines and those sort of things, which is great. But then you also have things like breathing, what we eat. It's very well documented that within the last 300 years, the human jaw has become narrowed. Our teeth are crooked. We're mouth breathers. We've lost the ability to strengthen our nasal cavities. We can't do these things. There's a certain reason why the best athletes on the world have unbelievable jaw structures and big nasal cavities, right? They're the apex predators. And that happened. And if you study that too, you can even look at newspaper articles from the 1800s where European settlers were called black mouse from the Native Americans, and Native Americans called us black mouse, and they were known for squeezing their babies' mouths together, making them sleep outside. They also weren't introduced to processed foods. the processed and sugary food in that time of the world was given to European rich people who became soft with their chewing, right? Because it was all to make life taste good, make it easy to chew, and make life comfortable. And that came at a cost, right? And so you can see that in a physiological way in which we breathe. We're very mechanically unsound breathers nowadays. We're very bad with our nasal mouth understanding, first and foremost, and then knowing what that does to our immunity. Our cellular system gets very moldy, which basically disrupts our tissue quality because we're not stressed at an environmental type way, hormesis, if you will. So heat and ice. We don't have that. That basically stresses our cell system and strengthens our tissue. You look at things as much as like your feet and your hands. I mean, we have seen a huge decrease in bone density, extremity strength in hands and feet because we wear shoes, you know, and you look at any sort of shoe, the front of the shoe comes up and that takes away the balance of your big toe and your other toes, and people don't use that. So we're heel walkers. We're going to take compensations there, but the shoes are sweet, you know, they
Right.
look cool and they
Dude,
make
one
my
of my
foot
one of
feel
my
comfortable.
questions is, are shoes, I was gonna go off this on the tech advancement thing. Are shoes one of the worst inventions ever?
Yeah,
Go.
man. These are what I wear at all time. My bare feet. No, I think shoes are great in the terms of like what shoes should be for. You know, like if you walk on glass, rocks, things that could hurt your toes and damage your body, that keeps you out of the ball game. You know, then you should have shoes on for that. We've had shoes and moccasins and boots and things our whole life. Have we had rubber underneath our feet? No, we have not had rubber underneath our feet for very long since we've been on the planet. So
Yeah.
the simple way I look at that is I just kind of put my own analogy on this of, if you look at electrical boxes outside, well, where are they going? They're in the ground and in the air. That's a battery, a positive and a negative charge, right? So you're creating a charge. There's tons of books. I think I'm drawing a blank on his
Oh
name.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, the guy who did the grounding, he made that big. Grounding is pretty hard to debate at this point for the electrical charge and health benefits we get of having our bare feet to the ground. That's pretty well known. I mean, anyone listening to this, just type in grounding and do your own research if you want. It's pretty well documented that our nervous system and our extremities need to touch the earth's surface, and they need to get that. Rubberized shoes, they take away that connectivity. I always look at it as if we were driving in a car and a lightning bolt hit us, why would we be fine? We got rubber on our tires, you know? So like take off the rubber, get back to life, get the electrical charge moving through you. You'll see benefits in the way in which your natural melatonin goes. People have seen testosterone benefits. Obviously, the blood flow circulates better. There's all that. So that's a physiological blood circulation type
Yeah, but
thing that
Harv, if
helps
I
us.
Google does earthing work, it's gonna say no.
Mhm.
What happens
What,
there?
what does it say? No.
I don't know. If I Google looking for a confirmation bias, I'm gonna find what I want to find. What do I do with that?
Yeah, so then you got to live it. That now makes you your own intuition
There
genius,
you
if you
go.
will. So
So
you
that's
can
the
either, yeah,
that I was gonna say. Like I didn't want you to rattle off on that. It's when we get to these concepts, like these
yeah,
health concepts. Um,
hmm
Most anything that we see in the healthcare field is still a theory. There's very little facts in the health and well-being field in general, right? Very
yeah,
little facts because we just don't know everything, which
yeah,
challenges people. People get pissed off when they don't know everything, or somebody doesn't know anything, right? Um, but not only are most things still theories, everything, even if it was a fact or is a fact, started out as a theory. And
mm,
if you go looking for confirmation bias things, you're going to find it. Like,
100%.
I mean, I can't stand when people do that. But
Well,
you,
even think about how research is made. I mean, the people who start research essentially go, what's the result that we want here? Who has the most money
yeah,
to do it? And then let's put the subjects in place so we can get it done,
absolutely, absolutely.
you
Which
know?
kind of goes back into like our food that we eat and what we think is good for us. It's like calcium in milk is the thing that I
Yeah,
always bring up. My father-in-law is going to kill me if he listens to this. He won't listen to it because he was a dairy farmer for years, and
yeah,
like there's more calcium in many other foods per cup, like
yeah,
per capita per se, than milk. But
yeah.
the milk industry did a damn good job at marketing it because they paid researchers, which is understandable. It's
Unbelievable. Yeah,
illegal to do that.
yeah.
But now the whole world thinks that milk has the best calcium concentration in them ever. So frustrating.
Well,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah. Good point.
you mentioned this stress and how because we live this easy life because of these technological advancements and um, gaining 1% better per generation kind of idea, it's okay to be stressed, right?
Oh yeah, man. Stress is a part of the life. It's part of the journey. What I talk about very often is, are you able to choose your stress, which is human power, right? It's you got to take a look in the mirror of what you believe, right? Beliefs are based, that's how we perceive things. So I mean, if you don't believe grounding doesn't work, well then you and I are probably just going to have a coffee and talk about something other than grounding. Like
Right.
it just won't. It's That's how it works. We all come from different systems of beliefs, which is what builds our perceptions. If you ask me what my belief is, I believe in nature. So I study human evolution and I study nature. That's what I study. This is what exists in nature, and that's what I just do my thing on.
You just said perception. I get excited about that because like perception is reality, right? And
Hmm.
if we believe that something's going to work, like if I don't believe that earthing is going to work and grounding is going to work, I'm
Hmm.
never mentally going to let it work. It's just not going to happen. If
Correct.
I challenge my thinking, if I challenge my
Yeah.
understanding and try to pursue something and start
Hmm.
leaning into this idea of perception, eventually that might work. Perception can become reality. But when we're
Yeah.
talking about stress, like what are some ways, uh, healthy ways that we should be challenging or dosing our stressors? Like you had mentioned cold and hot
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah, so stress to me is, can it meet adaptation, right? So if you can pick a stress or you can choose a stress, does it adapt you, right? So we can dive down this rabbit hole all the time, like heat and cold. And I think I have some stuff on our website too. Like heat and cold is perceived in your system as the full-fledged stress. So the nervous system is in a sympathetic state. So stress is sympathetic, right? Fight or flight or freeze, if you will. uh, Physiologically, adaptation comes through parasympathetic. So you can't adapt the state to get to higher levels mentally, emotionally, physically, unless it gets to a parasympathetic state. Point being, if I do a workout, which you see this a lot, let's say I go into a heavy plyometric exercise and I run sprints, right? So if I do that, the system goes into cortisol, adrenaline, I create a sympathetic, right? Now, where we miss on heat and ice is, what do people do? They go into heat and ice thinking it's a recovery. And now you have to ask the question of, well, what's the difference between training and recovery? Because more times than not, there is none. And so I don't even have necessarily, I don't want us to have that conversation. I wanted to look at it as, you are either stressing or you are adapting. And if you study an animal, if you have a dog or whatnot, I have a dog, and if you run my dog all the time, well, what's a dog do right after running all over the place? It passes out,
Yeah.
right? And there's no consciousness. So there's no thinking. The human mind goes in the future or the past. I'll talk more about that. Where the dog runs, goes into sympathetic, it stresses, fight or flight. And then right when it's done, it naps. And that's creating parasympathetic. When am I able to digest food again? When am I going to sleep? How am I going to get stronger? How do I get the fuel tank back into the tank? Right? Where like a human, we go into stress, which is in this scenario, plyometric or a sprint, if you will. And then we go into heat and ice, which is another stress. So that's like you running your dog all around the yard and they're tongue out, huffing and puffing, mouth breathing, and then grabbing your dog and going, it makes a lot of sense to throw it in this ice tub. Here, let's
Yeah.
jack it back up. Now it would, and it would jack back up. But then the thing is that you run the risk of compensation, which is how you see injuries take place, psychologically, anatomically, or physiologically. And this is what humans do all the time. We basically go, okay, I'm super tired, or I'm having a bad relationship right now, or I'm not able to downshift or de-stress, but I'm going to take my energy drink and I'm going to go because I have to check off the list that I got my workout in. I have to do these 7 meetings in a row. I have to go and sit in a cubicle, and then I go into rush hour, and then I'm frustrated with my family. And
Yeah.
that just doesn't work on your system. And so you have to choose your stress. Is your stress adapting you, or are you just having a stressor that you're unknowingly not knowing it about it, and then you're putting more stress on top of that, and that becomes, again, intuition.
Love it, man. I usually after somebody says something, I got like something smart to say back to. there's nothing else to say to that. I mean, we either stress or we adapt, and that's the end of
Yeah.
life. I mean, any species' only job is to evolve, like you said,
Hmm.
and evolving to these stresses and understanding, appreciating, acknowledging them is crucial to our evolution, either in our lifetime or in the human's lifetime, however long that might be until aliens take over. Um,
Yeah.
but we can modulate this stress through cold and ice too. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen you do this with athletes where we redline that sympathetic system by something like a breath work. I mean, people think of
Mm.
breath work as, okay, I've got to do my box breathing, I've got to do this 360 breath work into my diaphragm and into my pelvic floor and out to my sides. And it's not
Hmm.
just that. I mean, breath is so much more crucial than that, as you well know. Um, how do you utilize revving up the system, driving almost a sympathetic dosing, if you will,
Hmm.
with something like breath work?
Yeah, so great question. If you're going into a cold or a stressor or a workout, we want to have pain perception to be somewhat down, right? So if the brain goes into protection mode in any scenario like that, then all of a sudden you're going to start compensating at the body's level, right? If I think that that squat in my brain, if I perceive that as painful, then I'm going to
Kinesiophobia.
compensate.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So then something's going to get worse. Where breath can actually trigger your cognition, it can kind of take you into different levels. So example would be like a Wim Hof method or a hyperventilative state, upregulation, pranayama. There's tumo. There's tons of ways to do it for a slight period of time. That actually turns off your pain receptors. It doesn't mean that you're painless forever, but it turns it off briefly. So when I entertain that type of breathing, and then I enter a stressor, being a cold, yeah, then I can actually take on the immediate stimulus. And then with the stimulus, I have the ability to make a choice, which is going to come out in your response or your reaction, which is what we use the cold. The cold is just a medium, right? It's a tool. It's a medium to allow you to understand your responses in certain type of situations. Where if I can use the breathing to go into it, I can kind of get that pH a little bit higher, and that'll turn off my pain receptors slightly so that I
Hmm.
can handle a higher dosage of stress. And then from there, I can get into my position of visual training, breath downshifting, controlling the heart rate, being in a stressful situation that doesn't rattle me and I don't become very reaction. And now what happens in the consciousness of this is you develop human space, right? So I create space in my brain outside of the training, right? So when I get into a hockey game and I start huffing and puffing, well, I've been here before.
Yeah.
So I know what that is. And now I'm not going to eliminate my space and become reactionary. That could be making the bad, because when you get reactionary in the cortex of your brain, problem solving goes down, emotional reactivity goes up. Right. So this is where if you get an argument with your spouse and you tell them to calm down, they just freak out even more.
Never do that,
Right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's the same exact concept. If I have an athlete who covers the wrong bag in a baseball game and they're and the vision is the pupils are hugely dilated, their mouth breathing, they're super stressed out, and I say, "Why'd you do that?" Then they react and they freak out, and I lose them for the game. If you can understand that concept as a teacher or even an individual, then I can go, all right, what state am I in? Is my consciousness minimized? Am I about to make a poor choice? How do I open up the space again? How do I get back into that creativity, that higher thinking, that who I actually am? And that goes to physical movements too. If you can't feel your body moving, well, then you're just going to compensate through it. Mostly the human system is going to just force yourself through it. And then you're going to see an injury. You're going to see a break in the machine.
Yeah, for sure. You've mentioned this a couple times now, the vision aspect of things, and something that you are a huge proponent of is opening your field, open your
Hmm.
uh, mind's eye per se, not to get into like flow state and things like that, but by looking at horizons. And something that I've
Yeah.
heard you speak on before is looking at wide open areas such as the ocean horizon or a field horizon.
Hmm.
How does that work? How does opening your periphery and expanding your peripheral vision, what does that do to
Yes.
your ANS, your autonomic nervous system there?
Yeah, so your mouth and your breathing and your eyes are two immediate physiological triggers to your psychology. So psychologically, we're in survival states. We're always trying to stay away from things like uncertainty, change, attention, and struggle. We're trying to avoid all of that. So as a animal that you are, when I go into arousal, I'm actually just playing games or performing or I'm speaking or I'm going on whatever I'm doing. I'm going to perceive the moment to my level of awareness and go, is this too uncertain for me? Too much change for me? Is this too hard? Is there too much attention? And if it's too much, then you start to avoid, you shut down the motor skills, you start to freeze, problem solving goes down, you become emotionally reactive, and you either freeze and never show up, or you just don't do it, or you run, you flight and you fly away.
Mm-hmm.
Where the vision is just tied in with the breath as well. You actually pick up on the moment first through your physiology. So when your vision gets narrowed in, that's the first sign to go back to your brain and go, what's this environment look like? Is this too much for me? Do I need to shut things down? So if we can go into a stressor, being the cold or the heat or sprint work or anything that's like really hard, and we can get the vision wide and peripheral, right? I do this in balancing. You get a vision out, but then you see broadly. Okay, that starts to take your physiology and it starts to adapt your feedback loops to perceive things as safe, right? So now your body will move freely. Your tissue will work freely. Your consciousness isn't as freaked out. You're not as avoidance type state. You're not protecting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And no, I mean, we adapted as species to scan the horizon for threat. We don't
Yes.
have, I can't remember the 1990s movie where like these little tremors. These tremors are
Mhm.
coming up from the ground underneath us, or we don't have pterodactyls swooping
Yeah,
down and
I
picking our
remember
heads
that.
off. So like we
Yeah.
don't have vertical line threats in our world anymore. So we actually
Yeah.
adapted to scan the horizon for threat from lions and bears and things that'll come
Mhm.
after us. Um, which would generally trigger our ANS to go into sympathetic fight or flight
Yeah.
survival state. I mean, we predict in order to survive. So the more
Yeah.
we can, I guess, I don't want to use the same word of dosing, but add on a tolerance level to that, saying, hey, we're going to scan this. Cool,
Yeah.
no threats. I'm going to be safe. Oh, still no threats. I'm going to be safe. We kind of get a stepwise fashion of that.
Yeah. 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 That's exactly it. So really what we're talking about is, performance in the way I break it down is you have self-awareness, which we've talked a lot about. That's perception, right? Then you have objective choice. So that's the programming. That's the mapping out what the breath work is. Okay, we're going to use this breath work to get into a cold. That's an objective thing. We can actually see you getting better at that. If you run, you get faster. That's objective. That's a choice. That's beautiful. We can always strategize that and make that better. But the in my opinion, the gold comes in the feedback loops, which is through your senses. So your senses are actually telling you what the moment is. That's physiological presence. And so the way in which I balance or stand or walk or use my hands or my hearing or my vision or my breathing, all of that's actually telling me, am I in a sympathetic state that I'm able to operate in? Am I able to control this adrenaline? Or is it going to start freezing me because it's too scary or it's too much? Or am I in a parasympathetic? This is why heavy metal music's really fun to listen to and you get testosterone raised. But if you do that when the sun's down and you're trying to read a book, your anxiety goes up, right? It's just your hearing, it's just auditory system,
Yeah.
telling your CNS and your peripheral nervous system what's going on. So that's nature. That's your senses. It's the same thing with balance. The big thing of balancing is that it's actually just you stop. You don't walk barefoot. You don't balance on stuff. The whole world is mapped out. There's sidewalks. No stairs are perfect. Elevators are perfect. So you don't have to fear falling over. So as that happens, people fear falling over as they get older, and then they fall over because they don't have balance, and then they get hurt. And so you took away a human sense. You took away a sense of yours. The same thing with the vision. We don't allow our vision to see nature anymore. We keep
Yeah.
it in here. And that's a sympathetic state. You stay in a higher arousal state the entire day.
Well, and people forget that like our senses are all the same. Like our brain
Yeah.
interprets a sense regardless of, I mean, if it's, we're just talking pain, right?
Hmm.
Pain is just a signal to get your brain's attention, saying like, "Hey, something's going on here." You just stub your toe, your hands on a freaking hot stove, right?
Hmm.
Our smell, our taste, our vision, our hearing, our vibration, depending on how loud you're listening to that heavy metal rock music. All of that is just telling your brain a piece of information. Your brain's
Hmm.
job is to interpret that and make an outcome
Yeah.
based off of that decision. How
Well said.
we can't change the sense. We can change our interpretation of that sense through
Hmm.
time and repetition, which is your job,
Beautifully
right?
said. Yeah,
Um, there you go. So I don't want to keep you on too long. I got a couple questions I want to ask you. So this is questions we ask all the attendees, guests.
cool.
If you could be ranked top 10 in the world at something, what would it be and why?
I could be ranked top 10 in the world at something. What would it
And
be
don't
and
be
why?
cliche on me, Harv.
Yeah, no, I don't want to be. I would be, I guess, externally, if I'm going to go after achievement here, I would want to be, it's because the cliche internal discovery part would be, I'd rather just be the best me type deal, but I don't want to give you that. If I can give you I'll give you I've never really said
I'm
an
throwing you a hard
egotistical
ball here.
answer.
I'm not throwing you a softie.
Yeah. I'll take an egotistical achievement factor of, I'd like to be a really, established like author. I really do believe in the work that I create. I really do believe in what it can do for humanity. I'm not really light on talking about my purpose and what I want to do for the human performance world. I don't really know if that's a top 10 category, but I do want to see more naturistic, natural way of thinking in a high tech environment. I do want to do that. If that means that I got to just put the armor on and just be one of the 10 that does it, well, then here we go. But I would like to see us use technology and the things that we've established through our ability to think higher. I want to see us use that and not be used by it. I think that we don't understand ourselves. And so we've lost touch. And now we are, in a lack of a better term, we now need to have things tell us what we do. I think that it's a disgrace to our human birthright that we need an aura ring to tell us how we slept. I really think that that's bad. I think that it's really bad that you can't understand your heart rate, and you need a monitor to tell you that. I think that that's really bad that we've allowed that to win over our understanding of ourselves. So if there's a category for that, and I can fight for the top 10, well, then either be in it or at least support it.
I think you're already in it, man. I mean, from everything I know, like there's very few people leading this. I don't even want to call it a crusade, but getting back, using what we've gained to get back to what we've lost
Yeah,
is we're starting to see that change, which I love seeing.
so do I.
Um, but it's not happening fast enough, in my opinion. So we need
Yeah,
people
I
like you
agree.
doing that for us. So, what's one thing you know you can do better at and aspire to learn within the next year?
Great question. One thing I really
It's the only
can do
questions I
better at.
ask, Harvey.
Yeah, no, you do. You ask great ones. One thing I can do a better job of is learning where people are at. I think I can always do better at that, and that's kind of stayed consistent. But I think that stays in the forefront of my mind as a teacher is learning the learner. There's a lot of times where I miss because I don't spend enough time learning where you're at. You can't just bombard. I'm on a podcast, so I'm obviously talking about what I believe in and what I do. So I don't have this conversation with everybody. So when I'm talking to somebody and I meet them, I don't just say, take your shoes off. I got to learn where you're at. I got to learn your family history, your beliefs, your perceptions. I think that can always get better. And I think the more that we can empathize with people and get better at learning the learner, the more you help. So in this next year, if I could get better at that, if I could get better at seeing where people are coming from, I think I could do a better job of serving my purpose a little bit more.
Yeah, and I love hearing that from somebody who I believe is actually already pretty damn good at that. It's easy to project. It's easy to shout the loudest and try to get somebody's attention. You're going to gain disciples and followers in that realm
Yeah.
fast, but they're going to piddle out after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get good at any craft, and this is not just coaching or being a therapist or being a husband or in any relationship, if that's going to last, it takes those communication skills and learning where people are at.
Mm-hmm.
Last one for you.
100%.
What is one actionable step that you would advocate for listeners and viewers to take better care of their relationships, their health, their movement, and overall their lives?
Say that back to me. If I could help one person,
What's
if I
one
could help,
actionable step that somebody might be able to do tonight, tomorrow,
yeah.
this week,
Okay.
to take better care of their health overall?
Beautiful. Okay. Uh, I'm going to cheat and I'm going to answer this with two answers.
That's perfectly acceptable.
The first one I would say is actually acknowledge how much you breathe through your nose and pay attention to how much you do that. And you should be, unless you're in a really hard exercise, I think you should breathe through your nose every minute of the day. That includes sleep. So that would be my first thing. If you just became aware of that, that's all you'd have to do and inevitably get better. And you'd realize how important that is. I think you'll clean up uh, pretty much bias here, but you'll clean up the rest of your health by paying attention to that. So I would start nasal breathing, try to do that for the rest of your life and pay attention to that. Put your tongue at
Easier
the roof
said
of your
than
mouth.
done, that easy, right?
Oh, yeah. Breathe through your nose and do those things. The second thing I would do for all of your health is I would start writing. If I could suggest anything to any human, it would be to just write and have you start writing things, because then you're forced to judge yourself and that becomes rather valuable.
And it's uncomfortable to do right away. I mean,
Yeah.
judging yourself, the hardest person we can answer to is ourselves. And when you have to do that and look at yourself in the mirror every day or write to yourself every day, it's challenging to start, but it's alleviating at the end. I mean, you learn to love it. So
Yeah.
awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. Again, I want to keep you on schedule here, but
Yeah.
I greatly appreciate this conversation. I feel like I could film 10,000 episodes with you and pick your brain on many
I
more
appreciate it.
questions. But a little summary for everybody listening: being a human is everything. It's not just biological or physiological. There's a lot more that goes into it, and how we think and how we perceive our surroundings and utilize what's around us influences everything else in our life, including exploring what's around you, getting connected with the earth, whether that's with grounding or just seeing it and appreciating for it for its beauty that it is. And overall, stress is okay. We need to learn how
Hmm.
to adapt to that and appreciate the stressors that we have in our life, because we have it pretty darn easy, as Harvey had mentioned. So, thank you again, sir, and hopefully catch up with you soon.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. You're an absolute beast, Reed.
I try. I got big shoes to fill.
Keep it rolling, brother.